growing tech products. Together, Women in Tech session is here. KATYA SKOROBOGATOVA, operating partner at TheVentureCity, ELENA POLUBOCHKO, CTO at Godel Technologies, Laura MANESCU, Chief Development Officer at Modex, Julius Metrova, Account Manager Startups at Amazon Web Services, moderated by PRIYANKA BANERJEE, CEO and co-founder at Businesswizz.
Yes, wonderful. Session. Hello, and welcome everyone to today's Emerge Conference Women in Tech sessions. I'm super excited to be here. My name is PRIYANKA BANERJEE, and today I will be hosting this session with 4 wonderful and amazing people joining us today. My name is PRIYANKA. As I mentioned to you, I'm coming live from Helsinki, Finland. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Businesswizz. We are a company helping tech organizations become more diverse and inclusive. I myself have a background in tech. I worked as an IT consultant for over 6 years and moved on to being an entrepreneur and now working with tech organizations. So it's a pleasure to be here on this stage. And we will be having 4 guests today, as I mentioned, and we will be doing a fireside chat with each of them. Please feel free to write questions and ask whatever you want to ask to our wonderful speakers. We will take the questions at the end of the session. So we will take, in the first session, we have with us KATYA SKOROBOGATOVA. Hi, KATYA.
Hi, PRIYANKA. Hi.
And we also have with us Julia. Hi, Julia. Hi.
Hi.
So we will be doing the first session, and then we will have a 10 minutes break, and then we will introduce you to the next 2 speakers. So now let's dive right into discussing our first growth story with KATYA. Hey, KATYA. I'll give the stage over to you for you to just give a short introduction of about you and what you're doing currently, so that everybody knows you better.
Yeah. Thank you, PRIYANKA. I'm very excited to be here, although it's early morning in San Francisco, where I'm based. So my story is that I've been in tech for I was just like calculating it, and it's coming on 20 years, because I started actually like very, very early as a digital marketeer in Russia, working for a bunch of startups. And then in 2010, I started working with Facebook. At that point, already kind of, an aspiring social media company, but so my job at that time with them was to work on Facebook growth in Russia and basically like parts of Eastern Europe. That was a super exciting job because, as many of you know, Russia has had a very strong competitor, which was and is KATYA. So and then that was like one of the most exciting projects at that time, was actually bringing Mark Zuckerberg to Moscow in one of his first international trips, which was quite an ordeal, I can tell you. And then I worked for Facebook across a number of different products, including Instagram and Messenger. And my last 4 years at the company, I was working with WhatsApp. And that was the time when I moved to Silicon Valley via London. And so I've always been working on growth, mostly product-driven growth. Lastly, like kind of moving away from like pure marketing arena to actually figuring out how you can grow your product without putting as much money through virality, invites, and other things. And so my last like 4 years been with the early stage venture fund and accelerator, where we're investing in early stage companies, also helping them figure out and unlock growth. And yeah, so I'm working with a number of founders, female and male. And so, yeah, but
you have a very wide experience in the tech industry, which is super awesome. And listening from you about growing Facebook in Russia was super interesting. Tell us a little bit about your experience. Was it challenging or was it easy? I heard you saying that it was challenging getting Mark Zuckerberg to Moscow. But tell us about the overall experience, because as you said, Facebook coming to Russia was also kind of a new platform. And like any other new company or startup, probably it have had certain stages and certain experience.
Yeah.
learn from. Can you tell a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. It is actually probably the most exciting time of my career because I think it was a combination of like Facebook at that time also being a young company. It was like pre-IPO, and there were like many different things that the company was coming up with. So, for example, that was the time, like actually the like button that appeared in 2010 and like in the middle of 2010. So I saw it kind of appear and grow, and like that was actually one of the ways for us to grow in the market, because we worked with a number of media companies who wanted to make the experience of their users more interactive by implementing it. So, and then the other thing was like, I think there were like a lot of, I would say, like technical things which I find very exciting, which I always, there are like minor details which I always want founders to look at. So, for example, one of the things is that we wanted to make sure that localization worked well for Facebook in Russia, meaning that it was translated into Russian language well. But then the thing is that Russian language is normally, like, if you compare it with English, it's like 30% or 40% longer. So basically, a lot of the Russian words were not fitting the buttons. So we had to like reinvent what it's called, right? And that was like, there were like many things. But I think generally it was a hard uphill battle, because normally people are actually like, now we have like, for example, Facebook and Instagram, but there were like different interaction models. But at that time, basically because a lot of people were using VK as their core social network, they were not, so like Facebook was always coming in as a second. And if you want to build virality of the product, you want to make sure that you are like top of mind for them. So that's why it's been hard. And what ended up happening is that I think people differentiated themselves between products, between VK and Facebook, based on like their value system, essentially. And I would say their interest in being part of Facebook as a global network, meaning that they were excited about like potentially finding like friends and acquaintances outside, of Russia. And also I would say like a lot of people thought about like Facebook and still think in Russia is like Russian LinkedIn, because there was like a lot of kind of talking about values. A lot of people were at Facebook because they were like excited about new opportunities and chatting with people in their professional fields. So it's like, it's an interesting example of like how the platform can adjust itself for the specific, subset of users. So because like Facebook in Russia versus like Facebook in the US, very, very different kind of beasts still are, yeah.
Globalization, kind of, you go global, but then you have to localize the platform.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
How is it doing now? Just to give our audience an overview that you worked so hard to bring Facebook in Russia.
I would say that I'm out of Facebook for some time, of course, but like what I can see is that it's still active as a product, but it's still more or less kind of working with the subset of the users. So basically, if you look at the normal penetration for Facebook in the market, would be like definitely over 50 or 60% of the overall kind of population, or like networked population. But I would say that like I'm sure that it's much less for Facebook in Russia, just because of, like I said, this like self-selection that people do, yeah.
But it was an interesting experience for you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to hear from you how the platform grew and how it became established in a new market. And coming towards to today's day, when we are still going through pandemic and our marketplace is changing every day. We are all working from home, coming live from our homes, in our home offices. How do you think, like for all the startups who are joining us here today, the experiences of thinking about this situation as a new marketplace, as a new place where you have to launch your platform? How do you take your experiences from launching different platforms in different markets to this post-pandemic era? Do you see there is some kind of parallel that we can draw between?
Yeah, I feel like generally the interesting thing about the kind of startups, especially consumer-focused startups, I think about them sometimes as like fashions almost, It's like basically you want like the growth of a consumer startup needs to be needs to be tagged on to some existing trend. It is really kind of like you want to have it is much easier to kind of create and grow something if people are like fundamental, like if there is a big shift, for example, in terms of like, if you look at like Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, especially Instagram and WhatsApp, the biggest shift for them to grow was the fact that everybody was getting their first mobile smartphone with access to data and with access, like, and basically camera and microphone and all those things, right? And so I would say that actually, like every big shift in the industry, be it like an appearance of a new platform or like the change in like the world, which is like pandemic is actually, it's like, I always think about it as a positive thing for growth, depending on if you can capitalize on that, you know? So, and I feel like the way I view kind of the tech landscape is very much through the communication lens, because I've been working in the communication apps for such a long time. And I feel that it's a great time for like pandemic is a great time for all the kind of communication connect, like for all the products that are somehow enabling communication to grow. But let me talk a little bit about that, because I feel that we are right now very much in the process of disrupting work. Also because like now everybody's working from home and also kind of working remote, and also you can collect your remote team. And so I'm very excited about the big kind of growth wave for like work related tools. And I also view them as more or less communication tools. It's like, for example, when you use a Miro board, of course it is easier for you to use it to put together your like roadmap, for example, but ultimately it is the way that you communicate with your team. The same, like obviously around like things like Zoom, which is very obvious, and like Hopin or any other platforms that are built for communication. And like, you know, and I think that that is probably one of the most interesting trends, which I think are very positive. It's like people want to be collaborating in an easier way. And kind of, I think that this is the world what we're going to be living from now on. And yeah, so I think that's like one of the trends that I'm very, very excited about.
Definitely. To summarize what you were saying, like looking at the trends, what's going on, and at the moment, the trend is communication and making your life easier or your work easier. Is there any other strategies that you can tell to the digital services that are existing at the moment, who might not be very much looking at the trend, or their services might not align with the trend which is there, but we all know that everybody has to pivot and so because you have to make the business work. So for all of them who don't have that kind of pivot yet, what kind of strategies or pointers you would like to give so that they also continue to grow their businesses?
I think the most important thing that I've seen, like successful entrepreneurs understand kind of like what is the point where you still feel you want to persevere or like what is the point where you want to really kind of just like drop and do some other things. I think so. I feel that like while like perseverance and like stubbornness even like is the important kind of part of the, you know, entrepreneurial mix, I would say that you know, there's like sometimes it's important to kind of be very honest in terms of like, hey, what I'm working on right now is not gaining traction. And I think with consumer products, it's actually sometimes easier with like than with B2B products, because the important thing here is that in consumer products, also one thing that I would add is that you want sometimes like you can be super niche. And then like, and you're kind of, it's kind of easy to see if you're gaining traction or not. And even if it's like super niche, if you're gaining traction in the niche audience, that's already a good start. So I would say that like trying to limit the focus of the audience that you're servicing and trying to get traction with that audience, being honest if the traction is not there, that would be like my advice, basically, especially for like consumer focused products.
Yeah. Also, like from my experience being an entrepreneur myself and driving, going through the like the COVID whole thing, one of the things that I also saw with my work and also with the work which my colleagues have been doing, that kind of thinking how the needs of the customer has changed. Because what we did was we pivoted our way of providing the services, or we saw what the customers now need, which we can provide, which is quite similar to what we are doing. So it could be also, of course, what you said, like finding that niche market, but also you can kind of ask or do the research on the market and what the customers need, and if there is an easy way for you to pivot yourself and provide the same service in a different way. So not going to the restaurant to eat, but doing a home delivery works fine. Like, product is still food. So I think that's also really interesting. But yeah, thank you so much. I think we'll take the last question for you, for just an open question over here. We will be soon moving on to Julia and take some questions at the end. Just an open question. What would you suggest for all your audience who are here? They want to develop their startups. You have been working with startups for quite some time and you have been launching new platforms. Some, like, let's say 3 tips that from you would like to give to them to grow and develop into their businesses.
Like the first one is that, like, and I think it's like obvious, but it's still worth repeating, is that you need to talk to your customers as much as you can. And like, you know, build connections with them, get them on like video calls, figure out what works and what doesn't. So yeah, that I think would be tip number 1. And like tip number 2 is also about the, I feel that like and I've seen that like, that is also so important for the entrepreneurs, like get the people that you enjoy working with and they bring value, because I've seen so many successful teams that started with something, then moved to something else, then moved to something else, and then ultimately figure things out. But they could only do that as a team and do that together. So like paying attention to the team, building actions, you know, and then to go for them, so like so clear cut product to make something like the first version.
And Katya at the same time. So thank you so much. And let's move on to Julia Smotrova. I hope I have been taking all your names correctly. If I'm not, I'm very sorry about that. So welcome, Julia. Julia is the account manager startups for Amazon Web Services. And today we will be having a really interesting growth discussion with her as well. But before that, let's give the stage to her. And Julia, could you give us your introduction, what you have been doing? And over to you.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. By the way, excellent job pronouncing our names. No questions with that. You did an amazing job. Yes, so thank you for the introduction. So my name is Julia, and I have around 14 years of experience working in IT. It's all I remember is being in IT. That's why women in IT subject is so close to me. I started as a support desk person at IT consulting company in New York. So at that point, I was blonde with open blue eyes, a little bit naive, open to technology, coming to clients, talking to CTOs. And it was hard to be heard. It was hard to be accepted as an expert in a specific field. After being in the support, I moved into the management position. I managed the support desk. Then I became an IT consultant. And then I was invited to be part of Innovation Lab, still in New York. That was great. That was my first time hands-on experience trying to build MVPs, test MVPs. Then I moved back to Russia, and I became an innovation program manager for EMA region at Philip Morris International. Still IT department, still sitting at the table where 90% of middle management is men. And this is the reason probably why I was so eager to support women at all the stages. I was running my own Women in IT community in New York, and I was taking a huge part in Women in IT community in Moscow. And another thing you might know about me, if you've seen me before, I'm a Lean Startup Ambassador, the official one. So I was the one who brought the first official event from Eric Ries's team directly to Moscow. And I'm still running a Lean Startup community, and I'm a huge advocate. And this is something that I would love to talk to you about.
That's great. So, is that so that with the Amazon Web Services also that you have been like in the role now? Have you been still working with the startups? Have you been mentoring? What has been your role in that role at the moment?
Yeah. So my main responsibility right now is helping German startups grow by leveraging cloud computing technology. But before that, I was very much integrated in the startup ecosystem. I was a mentor, I was a coach, I was a consultant. I had even my own small firm helping startups to grow. I really love the early stage because this is the stage that everything is unknown and you need to run and test and you learn so much. But at the same time, I know that the growth stage is also extremely important. You have less unknown, but this unknown can be quite risky. And it's really important to mitigate this unknown risk as well. And I did work in startups myself. And some of them were not so successful as it happens with startups, but some of them were. So this is the reason why I believe I have a right to speak at this stage.
Yes, definitely. And with the startups or with something you say that with the failure, you learn more than you learn with the success. So I totally understand. This was like, I think, third or fourth business idea that we actually managed to scale. So that has been very interesting in the tech field also. So you want to talk about lean startup methodology today. So just to give an introduction, tell everybody who don't know anything about lean startup methodology for dummies, how would you explain? I consider me as a dummy, for example.
Okay. So. You're the one who's totally using it the full way. But basically, it's putting a little bit of science into the art of innovation. So it's a methodology that helps startups to test their ideas, business models, cheap and dirty early on, kill the ugly ducklings or ideas that are not going to work and move forward. And the way how you do it, you just build the product. It's called the minimal viable product. You give it to the customer to test and try, and you learn from the feedback, and you continue with this endless loop of building, measuring, and learning, and that helps you to actually decrease your product creation cycle and to find your product market fit faster.
Wow. That's quite a lot. Let's break it down now. It sounds really interesting, and I can hear and understand why. Then it would be really important for any company to grow. So, can you give us like some like a summary of or some pointers that this, and this is what we have to do if we want to apply lean startup methodology to our companies?
Excellent. Yes. And for people who do know a lot about lean startup, they would probably think that it might not be such a good fit for scaling for the stage of growth, because lean startup, yes, it's mostly about killing the ideas early on at the early stages. So, but wait, I'm right now scaling, right? I have the product, I'm growing my team, I'm expanding to different markets. What are you talking about? It's not like I'm going to kill the whole my baby right now. No, lean startup doesn't apply to me. But this is not yet correct. We can learn a lot about being lean, even at the stage of scaling growth. And here are the 3 things that can help you. The first one is prioritization, meaning that you still have unknowns, and these unknowns needs to be handled. You still can calculate and find your riskiest assumptions in your growth strategy, in the project that you have right now that is in front of you, that can kill this growth, that can kill whatever you're trying to do. And then you try to test it. So I will give you just a story from one of the startups I was mentoring. So that was a startup, a social media platform. I had a conversation with CEO, and I asked him, like, what are your biggest risks? What can put all this show on hold? And he was like, I don't really have anything. I'm planning to grow X amount of times every month, and everything looks good. And I don't see anything that I cannot prevent. Something that can kill this growth path. I said, okay, fine. Now let's bring team, a little bit more people into conversation and ask them, maybe they have their own risks as well. So that's how we brought CTO, and I asked the CTO a question. Do you have the infrastructure to support the growth that CEO was talking about? And then there was a silence in the room, and he's like, oh, we run everything on premises, and we are right now at 50% capacity. So if you want to grow this amount, it's like at some point we will not be able to invite any new users. And this, to me, it's a huge risk. It's something that you need to address as early as possible. And for a startup, it's very important to revise this risk. So right now, this is the biggest risk, but in 2 months, it might be something else. And prioritization is important in the way that most of the times you're running around, you're looking big picture, you're looking strategy, you're having so many things to do. And these tiny little things can just fall from your plate and then basically stop you from achieving the goals you need to achieve.
You mean to say, like, prioritizing, identifying your risks, or
Yes.
what can kill the growth of the organization.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it can be at different stage, it can be a different risk. For example, you are right now at the stage of hiring, like you actively hiring. What is the biggest thing that can actually kill your growth? It might be your culture. The faster you grow, the more people you hire, the more you dilute your culture. So then you need to find some measures that can help you to mitigate this risk. I think the biggest difference, lean startup risk mitigation from waterfall risk mitigation, is you always focus on the riskiest risk, the most unknown. You tackle it first, and then you move to the next riskiest risk at that moment of time where you are standing, comparing to waterfall when you try to make a list and you try to mitigate all at once.
Yeah. So mitigating or identifying risk as you grow, and make it kind of like as a ritual to do at all the different stages. So not just on the growth stage, where definitely it would be very good to do, because it's easier to pivot in the beginning or change your business idea or do something else than at the later stage. So what about then? What are the next other stages? Like, what would be the 2 remaining steps you said?
The next one will be testing, right? So you have identified this biggest risk and you run some tests, and you can still do it cheap and dirty and fast. I will give you another story. So there was a startup I was mentoring, and we did a retrospective of their expansion to German market. So this startup had an e-commerce solution, and they were already quite established in the Russian market. So they believed that going into Europe would be the next proper step. And they approached it in a proper manner, like every business would approach it. They purchased marketing research, look at different countries. They identified that in Germany there were plenty small stores that didn't have any digital solutions. So they figured, okay, so the market is huge. This is the first country we should focus on. They hired a person who spoke German to run sales activities. They invested into translating and adapting the platform. So they did invest a lot of time and materials, everything, just to try out this market. So they came prepared. They went out after a few months and they started talking to the stores to find out that they were not even close to be ready to adapt any digital solution. So German market was so much behind for any solutions that they were definitely not early adopters. And from outreach, I think it was they did 200 or 300 stores. There was zero responses. And
so the market research was not done, and that's like a...
They did the market research the proper way, but the thing is, their riskiest assumption was, does actually our product solve a problem, and how big is the problem for the market we are moving in? And they could have solved this much cheaper than what they did by just going out and talking to customers first. Just going, I know it was pre-pandemic times, right now it's a bit difficult, but you can still pick up the phone, you can still talk to people, you can still ask for opinions, you can go to forums. They could have saved this money and time, and this is what they told me during the retrospective, like, next market will be, I don't remember, it was, I think, Portugal, and we're not doing any preparation. No, they actually opened a business unit in Germany, so they were like legally, officially functioning. So like, we're not doing anything of that. We're just going and talking to our customers first, just to ensure that this is the right fit.
The right fit. And also, I think Katya mentioned it in her talk as well, that talking to your customer is not just important to launch your business, but important to scale it and keep it growing, because you never know what your customers need. Like, you know, now we have smartphones. When I was in school, I didn't know it existed. So, you know, my priorities change, and probably those products would not fit to the customer that it used to. So yeah, that sounds really interesting. So what is then the last one?
So the last one, metrics. Metrics is the key of everything, all decision making. I think decision making is the most important. Should we pivot? Should we close? Should we go forward? Should we put the money in here? Especially at the stage of scaling, you already have some money, and the marketing budget is going to be huge depending on what you're doing. So where should we put this money? What should be the right channel for us in the marketing, so on and so forth? And depending on your decisions, it will basically tell you how successful you're going to be in the future. But how do you make decisions? You make decisions based on data. And what do you need to have the data? You need to have right metrics that you track. And you need to think about the metrics way in advance before you even run any experiments. You think about, okay, what am I planning to do? How I'm going to track my success? And what correlation between what I'm doing and the business outcome that I expect to have? And I will give you another story, from my mentoring experience. Thank you. It was in Germany. It was a startup, educational startup, EdTech. They created a platform for students and teachers where they could collaborate on different topics. So they were quite good. Like, I mean, they had the product. The product was selling okay, and they came to me with some questions like, what should be the next step? We have a few features we want to incorporate. So I'll tell them, okay, go ahead, talk to your customers about what they would like to see, what is they expect next from the experience they have right now. So they went out. And a few months later, I got a call from them. I'm like, oh my God, you won't believe this. We're like skyrocketing. Our sign-ups are going up. This is amazing. We're so happy. We did the interviews. We found out this cool new feature. We rolled it out, and now it's like a huge success. And we cannot stop drinking the champagne. And I was also excited for them as well. I was like, wow, this is so cool. I'm so happy to hear you doing such a great job. But then I got like a little bit cautious. And then I ask them, okay, but how do you know that this feature actually drives the growth of users? And they're like, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, can you track, like, do you track these things? No, but look, there was no growth when we launched this feature, and then there is growth. Isn't it? There is the correlation. I'm like, no, that's not yet a correlation. Do you know if the users who sign up is actually using this feature? Oh, no, we're not tracking that. I'm like, okay. I've heard that they were running a campaign at the university. I was like, can it be this campaign? Like, maybe it's just a delayed effect of the campaign you run just a month before you launch this feature. Do you track where your users coming from? Are they coming from this campaign? Oh, we don't have anything set up to track this. I'm like, okay, but you have the money right now, right? You need to understand where to put this money. Should it be the marketing campaign, or should it be developing this feature further? And yeah, they didn't know these answers, and that's a tough thing. Like, how can you make a decision if you don't know what is happening? And I believe there are two metrics that are really important for any startup owner to keep in mind. The first one is what brings you money. What's the business value? It can be premium subscriptions. It can be, I don't know, purchases. And the second one, extremely important, is value to the customer. How do you know that your product brings value to the customer? Yeah. And not just knowing these metrics, but deeply understanding and diving deep. Okay, I have this number of signups. What is driving this? By, like, break it down by day, by channel, by going as deep as you can, and that is definitely going to help you. And the startup was asking me the next question they had, okay, so now what do? We didn't set anything up in advance. And the answer was, go talk to your newly signed up customers. Go talk to them. They just signed up. They have all the information. Ask them, why did you sign up? What are you using? And this is how you can also gain very important insights that can help you to move forward.
I can tell you, like, I have been working with tech companies, and I have been working with even bigger companies, and even with company culture, what we do is measure data insights and help them create, these kind of metrics. And to my surprise, they also don't think about it. And I think that it somehow comes from the fact that if you don't have that kind of process in the beginning, like having this, like a process to keep measuring what you are doing, even when you grow and you scale very fast, it then becomes difficult to put these new processes, and then it's all like a no measurement, no data. We're just going into our own will. So I totally agree to the metrics being super important, especially for the startups, when we are not thinking about, okay, we will see, we first test it out, then we'll see how it goes, and not depending on your gut feeling, which is always great, but also having the proper data to prove that. And today I'm going to go back and look at my matrices if everything is correct and if I'm measuring everything. So thank you for giving those tips. We have 3 minutes left, and I don't see any questions yet here. If there are any questions, feel free to send, but in that time, maybe Julia, you can do the closing words. Just help us understand what would you already gave the 3 things: prioritization, experiment your ideas, and measure it. Other than that, would you like to say something to the audience today? And thank you for joining us then.
Thank you very much. I will probably say one last thing, since I'm so passionate about women in IT, is not be a man in IT, not try to act like a man, not try to compete like a man still wearing a skirt. Be a woman. Just be who you are and use your benefits. You're amazing at multitasking, you're creative, you're passionate, you're empathic, and these are your biggest things you bring out into the culture, you bring into the business. And that would be probably my last word. Be a woman and shine.
That's a great thing, because we got a question related to the same thing. Did you ever pretend to be a male to have a better offer?
I did. I would be very frank. I did, until I had talk with the psychologist, and the psychologist, it was like regarding something completely different. She said, like, there's something weird what you're saying, like you never refer to yourself as a woman. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm a woman, I consider myself a woman. She's like, no, there's something wrong. Like, tell me how you feel being a woman. You're a woman and you feel, and I'm like, blank, I don't know how I feel. And yes, I've realized that at my beginning of the career, I had this competitive feeling of being on the same level as a man, as intelligent, as pushy, as, I don't know, just, I was competing. I was thinking, why am I not a man? If I was a man, I could have achieved this and that and to probably rule the world already and be in so much advanced in my career. But then I've learned that actually being a woman can advance me more if I really appreciate that I'm a woman and I have different qualities and they are amazing and they also move the world.
Thank you so much. We are women and everybody is unique, and we should all just love our uniqueness. And thank you so much for sharing your growth stories with us, Yulia and Katya. We will be now taking a 10 minutes break and coming back with another 2 wonderful guests. So please don't go anywhere. Do some stretches, get hydrated, drink some water, and see you all in 10 minutes.